Welcome everybody. If you're catching the recording, week number 2 of Think and Grow Rich Book Club. Ready? Here we go. Hopefully it's where we finished off.
And speak, he was obviously disfigured for life.
Yes.
Surely this was a limitation which that child had not set up in his own mind. What could I do about it? Somehow I would find a way to transplant into that child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means of conveying sound to his brain without the aid of ears. As soon as the child was old enough to cooperate, I would fill his mind so completely with a burning desire to hear that nature would, by methods of her own, translate it into physical reality. All this thinking took place in my own mind, but I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I had made to myself, not to accept a deaf mute for a son. As he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, we observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached the age when children usually begin talking, he made no attempt to speak, but we could tell by his actions that he could hear certain sounds slightly. That was all I wanted to know. I was convinced that if he could hear even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened which gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source. We bought a Victrola. When the child heard the music for the first time, he went into ecstasies and promptly appropriated the machine. He soon showed a preference for certain records. Among them, It's a Long Way to Tipperary. On one occasion, he played that piece over and over for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the Victrola with his teeth clamped on the edge of the case. The significance of this self-formed habit of his did not become clear to us until years afterward, for we had never heard of the principle of bone conduction of sound at that time. Shortly after he appropriated the Victrola, I discovered that he could hear me quite clearly when I spoke with my lips touching his mastoid bone, or at the base of the brain. These discoveries placed in my possession the necessary media by which I began to translate into reality my burning desire to help my son develop hearing and speech. By that time, he was making stabs at speaking certain words. The outlook was far from encouraging, but desire backed by faith knows no such word as impossible. Having determined that he could hear the sound of my voice plainly, I began immediately to transfer to his mind the desire to hear and speak. I soon discovered that the child enjoyed bedtime stories, so I went to work, creating stories designed to develop in him self-reliance, imagination, and a keen desire to hear and to be normal. There was one story in particular, which I emphasized by giving it some new and dramatic coloring each time it was told. It was designed to plant in his mind the thought that his affliction was not a liability, but an asset of great value. Despite the fact that all the philosophy I had examined clearly indicated that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage, I must confess that I had not the slightest idea how this affliction could ever become an asset. However, I continued my practice of wrapping that philosophy in bedtime stories, hoping the time would come when he would find some plan by which his handicap could be made to serve some useful purpose. Reason told me plainly that there was no adequate compensation for the lack of ears and natural hearing equipment. Desire backed by faith pushed reason aside and inspired me to carry on. As I analyzed the experience in retrospect, I can see now that my son's faith in me had much to do with the astounding results. He did not question anything I told him. I sold him the idea that he had a distinct advantage over his older brother, and that this advantage would reflect itself in many ways. For example, the teachers in school would observe that he had no ears, and because of this, they would show him special attention and treat him with extraordinary kindness. They always did. His mother saw to that, by visiting the teachers and arranging with them to give the child the extra attention necessary. I sold him the idea, too, that when he became old enough to sell newspapers, his older brother had already become a newspaper merchant, he would have a big advantage over his brother, for the reason that people would pay him extra money for his wares, because they could see that he was a bright, industrious boy, despite the fact he had no ears. we could notice that gradually the child's hearing was improving. Moreover, he had not the slightest tendency to be self-conscious because of his affliction. When he was about 7, he showed the first evidence that our method of servicing his mind was bearing fruit. For several months, he begged for the privilege of selling newspapers, but his mother would not give her consent. She was afraid that his deafness made it unsafe for him to go on the street alone. Finally, he took matters in his own hands. One afternoon, when he was left at home with the servants, he climbed through the kitchen window, shinnied to the ground, and set out on his own. He borrowed 6 cents in capital from the neighborhood shoemaker, invested it in papers, sold out, reinvested, and kept repeating until late in the evening. After balancing his accounts and paying back the 6 cents he had borrowed from his banker, he had a net profit of 42 cents. When we got home that night, we found him in bed asleep, with the money tightly clenched in his hand. His mother opened his hand, removed the coins, and cried. Of all things, crying over her son's first victory seemed so inappropriate. My reaction was the reverse. I laughed heartily, for I knew that my endeavor to plant in the child's mind an attitude of faith in himself had been successful. His mother saw in his first business venture a little deaf boy who had gone out in the streets and risked his life to earn money. I saw a brave, ambitious, self-reliant little businessman whose stock in himself had been increased 100% because he had gone into business on his own initiative and had won. The transaction pleased me because I knew that he had given evidence of a trait of resourcefulness that would go with him all through life. Later events proved this to be true. When his older brother wanted something, he would lie down on the floor, kick his feet in the air, cry for it, and get it. When the little deaf boy wanted something, he would plan a way to earn the money, then buy it for himself. He still follows that plan. Truly, my own son has taught me that handicaps can be converted into stepping stones, on which one may climb toward some worthy goal, unless they are accepted as obstacles and used as alibis. The little deaf boy went through the grades, high school, and college without being able to hear his teachers, excepting when they shouted loudly at close range. He did not go to a school for the deaf. We would not permit him to learn the sign language. We were determined that he should live a normal life and associate with normal children, and we stood by that decision, although it cost us many heated debates with school officials. While he was in high school, he tried an electrical hearing aid, but it was of no value to him, due, we believed, to a condition that was disclosed when the child was 6 by Dr. J. Gordon Wilson of Chicago, when he operated on one side of the boy's head and discovered that there was no sign of natural hearing equipment. During his last week in college, 18 years after the operation, something happened which marked the most important turning point of his life. Through what seemed to be mere chance, he came into possession of another electrical hearing device, which was sent to him on trial. He was slow about testing it, due to his disappointment with a similar device. Finally, he picked the instrument up and, more or less carelessly, placed it on his head, hooked up the battery, and lo, as if by a stroke of magic, his lifelong desire for normal hearing became a reality. For the first time in his life, he heard practically as well as any person with normal hearing. God moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Overjoyed because of the changed world which had been brought to him through his hearing device, he rushed to the telephone, called his mother, and heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voices of his professors in class, for the first time in his life. Previously, he could hear them only when they shouted at short range. He heard the radio. He heard the talking pictures. For the first time in his life, he could converse freely with other people, without the necessity of their having to speak loudly. Truly, he had come into possession of a changed world. We had refused to accept nature's error, and by persistent desire, we had induced nature to correct that error through the only practical means available. Desire had commenced to pay dividends, but the victory was not yet complete. The boy still had to find a definite and practical way to convert his handicap into an equivalent asset. Hardly realizing the significance of what had already been accomplished, but intoxicated with the joy of his newly discovered world of sound, he wrote a letter to the manufacturer of the hearing aid, enthusiastically describing his experience. Something in his letter, something perhaps which was not written on the lines, but back of them, caused the company to invite him to New York. When he arrived, he was escorted through the factory, and while talking with the chief engineer, telling him about his changed world, a hunch, an idea, or an inspiration, call it what you wish, flashed into his mind. It was this impulsive thought which converted his affliction into an asset, destined to pay dividends in both money and happiness to thousands for all time to come. The sum and substance of that impulsive thought was this. It occurred to him that he might be of help to the millions of deafened people who go through life without the benefit of hearing devices, if he could find a way to tell them the story of his changed world. Then and there, he reached a decision to devote the remainder of his life to rendering useful service to the hard of hearing. For an entire month, he carried on an intensive research, during which he analyzed the entire marketing system of the manufacturer of the hearing device, and created ways and means of communicating with the hard of hearing all over the world, for the purpose of sharing with them his newly discovered changed world. When this was done, he put in writing a 2-year plan based upon his findings. When he presented the plan to the company, he was instantly given a position for the purpose of carrying out his ambition. Little did he dream when he went to work that he was destined to bring hope and practical relief to thousands of deafened people who, without his help, would have been doomed forever to deaf-mutism. Shortly after he became associated with the manufacturer of his hearing aid, he invited me to attend a class conducted by his company for the purpose of teaching deaf-mutes to hear and to speak. I had never heard of such a form of education. Therefore, I visited the class skeptical but hopeful that my time would not be entirely wasted. Here I saw a demonstration which gave me a greatly enlarged vision of what I had done to arouse and keep alive in my son's mind the desire for normal hearing. I saw deaf mutes actually being taught to hear and to speak through application of the selfsame principle I had used more than 20 years previously in saving my son from deaf-mutism. Thus, through some strange turn of the wheel of fate, my son Blair and I have been destined to aid in correcting deaf-mutism for those as yet unborn, because we are the only living human beings, as far as I know, who have established definitely the fact that deaf-mutism can be corrected to the extent of restoring to normal life those who suffer with this affliction. It has been done for one, it will be done for others. There is no doubt in my mind that Blair would have been a deaf-mute all his life if his mother and I had not managed to shape his mind as we did. The doctor who attended at his birth told us, confidentially, the child might never hear or speak. A few weeks ago, Dr. Irving Voorhees, a noted specialist on such cases, examined Blair very thoroughly. He was astounded when he learned how well my son now hears and speaks, and said his examination indicated that, theoretically, the boy should not be able to hear at all. But the lad does hear, despite the fact that X-ray pictures show there is no opening in the skull whatsoever, from where his ears should be to the brain. When I planted in his mind the desire to hear and talk, and live as a normal person, there went with that impulse some strange influence which caused nature to become bridge builder and span the gulf of silence between his brain and the outer world, by some means which the keenest medical specialists have not been able to interpret. It would be sacrilege for me to even conjecture as to how nature performed this miracle. It would be unforgivable if I neglected to tell the world as much as I know of the humble part I assumed in the strange experience. It is my duty and a privilege to say I believe, and not without reason, that nothing is impossible to the person who backs desire with enduring faith. Verily, a burning desire has devious ways of transmuting itself into its physical equivalent. Blair desired normal hearing. Now he has it. He was born with a handicap which might easily have sent one with a less defined desire to the street with a bundle of pencils and a tin cup. That handicap now promises to serve as the medium by which he will render useful service to many millions of hard of hearing, also to give him useful employment at adequate financial compensation the remainder of his life. The little white lies I planted in his mind when he was a child, by leading him to believe his affliction would become a great asset, which he could capitalize, has justified itself. Verily, there is nothing, right or wrong, which belief plus burning desire cannot make real. These qualities are free to everyone. In all my experience in dealing with men and women who had personal problems, I never handled a single case which more definitely demonstrates the power of desire. Authors sometimes make the mistake of writing of subjects of which they have but superficial or very elementary knowledge. It has been my good fortune to have had the privilege of testing the soundness of the power of desire through the affliction of my own son. Perhaps it was providential that the experience came as it did, for surely no one is better prepared than he to serve as an example of what happens when desire is put to the test. If Mother Nature bends to the will of desire, is it logical that mere men can defeat a burning desire? Strange and imponderable is the power of the human mind. We do not understand the method by which it uses every circumstance, every individual, every physical thing within its reach, as a means of transmuting desire into its physical counterpart. Perhaps science will uncover the secret. I planted in my son's mind the desire to hear and to speak, as any normal person hears and speaks. That desire has now become a reality. I planted in his mind the desire to convert his greatest handicap into his greatest asset. That desire has been realized. The modus operandi by which this astounding result was achieved is not hard to describe. It consisted of three very definite facts. First, I mixed faith with the desire for normal hearing, which I passed on to my son. Second, I communicated my desire to him in every conceivable way available, through persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. As this chapter was being completed, news came of the death of Madame Schumann-Heink. One short paragraph in the news dispatch gives the clue to this unusual woman's stupendous success as a singer. I quote the paragraph because the clue it contains is none other than desire. Early in her career, Madame Schumann-Heink visited the director of the Vienna Court Opera to have him test her voice. But he did not test it. After taking one look at the awkward and poorly dressed girl, he exclaimed none too gently, "With such a face, and with no personality at all, how can you ever expect to succeed in opera? My good child, give up the idea. Buy a sewing machine and go to work. You can never be a singer." Never is a long time. The director of the Vienna Court Opera knew much about the technique of singing. He knew little about the power of desire, when it assumes the proportion of an obsession. If he had known more of that power, he would not have made the mistake of condemning genius without giving it an opportunity. Several years ago, one of my business associates became ill. He became worse as time went on, and finally was taken to the hospital for an operation. Just before he was wheeled into the operating room, I took a look at him and wondered how anyone as thin and emaciated as he could possibly go through a major operation successfully. The doctor warned me that there was little, if any, chance of my ever seeing him alive again. But that was the doctor's opinion. It was not the opinion of the patient. Just before he was wheeled away, he whispered feebly, "Do not be disturbed, Chief. I will be out of here in a few days." The attending nurse looked at me with pity. But the patient did come through safely. After it was all over, his physician said, nothing but his own desire to live saved him. He never would have pulled through if he had not refused to accept the possibility of death. I believe in the power of desire backed by faith, because I have seen this power lift men from lowly beginnings to places of power and wealth. I have seen it rob the grave of its victims. I have seen it serve as the medium by which men staged a comeback after having been defeated in 100 different ways. I have seen it provide my own son with a normal, happy, successful life, despite nature's having sent him into the world without ears. How can one harness and use the power of desire? This has been answered through this and the subsequent chapters of this audiobook. This message is going out to the world at the end of the longest and perhaps the most devastating depression America has ever known. It is reasonable to presume that the message may come to the attention of many who have been wounded by the depression, those who have lost their fortunes, others who have lost their positions, and great numbers who must reorganize their plans and stage a comeback. To all these, I wish to convey the thought that all achievement, no matter what may be its nature or its purpose, must begin with an intense, burning desire for something definite. Through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, which she has never divulged, nature wraps up in the impulse of strong desire that something which recognizes no such word as impossible and accepts no such reality as failure. Chapter 3. Faith. Visualization of and belief in attainment of desire. The second step toward riches. Faith is the head chemist of the mind. When faith is blended with the vibration of thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up the vibration, translates it into its spiritual equivalent, and transmits it to infinite intelligence, as in the case of prayer. The emotions of faith, love, and sex are the most powerful of all the major positive emotions. When the three are blended, they have the effect of coloring the vibration of thought in such a way that it instantly reaches the subconscious mind, where it is changed into its spiritual equivalent, the only form that induces a response from infinite intelligence. Love and faith are psychic, related to the spiritual side of man. Sex is purely biological and related only to the physical. The mixing or blending of these three emotions has the effect of opening a direct line of communication between the finite thinking mind of man and infinite intelligence. How to develop faith. There comes now a statement which will give a better understanding of the importance the principle of autosuggestion assumes in the transmutation of desire into its physical or monetary equivalent. Namely, faith is a state of mind which may be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instructions to the subconscious mind through the principle of autosuggestion. As an illustration, consider the purpose for which you are presumably listening to this audiobook. The object is, naturally, to acquire the ability to transmute the intangible thought impulse of desire into its physical counterpart, money. By following the instructions laid down in the chapters on autosuggestion and the subconscious mind, as summarized in the chapter on autosuggestion, you may convince the subconscious mind that you believe you will receive that for which you ask, and it will act upon that belief, which your subconscious mind passes back to you in the form of faith, followed by definite plans for procuring that which you desire. The method by which one develops faith, where it does not already exist, is extremely difficult to describe. Almost as difficult, in fact, as it would be to describe the color of red to a blind man who has never seen color and has nothing with which to compare what you describe to him. Faith is a state of mind which you may develop at will, after you have mastered the 13 principles, because it is a state of mind which develops voluntarily through application and use of these principles. Repetition of affirmation of orders to your subconscious mind is the only known method of voluntary development of the emotion of faith. Perhaps the meaning may be made clearer through the following explanation as to the way men sometimes become criminals. Stated in the words of a famous criminologist, when men first come into contact with crime, they abhor it. If they remain in contact with crime for a time, they become accustomed to it and endure it. If they remain in contact with it long enough, they finally embrace it and become influenced by it. This is the equivalent of saying that any impulse of thought which is repeatedly passed on to the subconscious mind is finally accepted and acted upon by the subconscious mind, which proceeds to translate that impulse into its physical equivalent by the most practical procedure available. In connection with this, consider again the statement, all thoughts which have been emotionalized, given feeling, and mixed with faith, begin immediately to translate themselves into their physical equivalent or counterpart. The emotions, or the feeling portion of thoughts, are the factors which give thoughts vitality, life, and action. The emotions of faith, love, and sex, when mixed with any thought impulse, give it greater action than any of these emotions can do singly. Not only thought impulses which have been mixed with faith, but those which have been mixed with any of the positive emotions or any of the negative emotions may reach and influence the subconscious mind. From this statement, you will understand that the subconscious mind will translate into its physical equivalent a thought impulse of a negative or destructive nature, just as readily as it will act upon thought impulses of a positive or constructive nature. This accounts for the strange phenomenon which so many millions of people experience, referred to as misfortune or bad luck. There are millions of people who believe themselves doomed to poverty and failure because of some strange force over which they believe they have no control. They are the creators of their own misfortunes because of this negative belief, which is picked up by the subconscious mind and translated into its physical equivalent. This is an appropriate place at which to suggest again that you may benefit, by passing on to your subconscious mind, any desire which you wish translated into its physical or monetary equivalent in a state of expectancy or belief that the transmutation will actually take place. Your belief or faith is the element which determines the action of your subconscious mind. There is nothing to hinder you from deceiving your subconscious mind when giving it instructions through autosuggestion, as I deceived my son's subconscious mind. To make this deceit more realistic, conduct yourself just as you would if you were already in possession of the material thing which you are demanding when you call upon your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind will transmute into its physical equivalent, by the most direct and practical media available, any order which is given to it in a state of belief or faith that the order will be carried out. Surely, enough has been stated to give a starting point, from which one may, through experiment and practice, acquire the ability to mix faith with any order given to the subconscious mind. Perfection will come through practice. It cannot come by merely reading instructions. If it be true that one may become a criminal by association with crime, and this is a known fact, it is equally true that one may develop faith by voluntarily suggesting to the subconscious mind that one has faith. The mind comes finally to take on the nature of the influences which dominate it. Understand this truth, and you will know why it is essential for you to encourage the positive emotions as dominating forces of your mind, and discourage and eliminate negative emotions. A mind dominated by positive emotions becomes a favorable abode for the state of mind known as faith. A mind so dominated may, at will, give the subconscious mind instructions, which it will accept and act upon immediately. Faith is a state of mind which may be induced by autosuggestion. All down the ages, the religionists have admonished struggling humanity to have faith in this, that, and the other dogma or creed, but they have failed to tell people how to have faith. They have not stated that faith is a state of mind, and that it may be induced by self-suggestion. In language which any normal human being can understand, we will describe all that is known about the principle through which faith may be developed.
Cool. Ian suggests that we pause and recap. I love it. Let's do it. Ian, what do you want to share? You're muted.
If you didn't say I was muted, like I would keep talking.
I just kept going.
Yeah, I kept going. So I was gonna say like, should we just recap the last bit of desire and then start into like the first few bits of faith, because like there's a lot of information there, I
Mhm.
felt. So just like a recap, and then maybe how we interpret it, and like maybe how could we practice it. That's what I kind of thought about, because
I love
I was
that.
making notes, and I'm like, okay, it seemed a little dense, because towards the tail end of the first chapter, I think he does a recap on like how the little guy had like he put that desire that the kid's gonna learn how to listen and talk and everything, right? And then I think the second step was, I can't remember. See, oh
I think I wrote them down.
Yeah, but like how can we apply these in our, I guess, day-to-day lives? Like let's
Yeah.
maybe that's what I thought, and then kind of continue. Because then I think under faith he talks about like what is it like how to develop faith and like the repetition of affirmation. So like you gotta like I guess like how do we practice that? Like I guess one way is you could write it down, but then even the part where he said like try to fill your mind with positive thoughts. So like I don't know if we could brainstorm ways where we could kind of practice that so it gets
Yeah.
easier, or we could continue.
I love that. How do you feel about like I know like for me, like I started writing down like a whole bunch of money affirmations.
Okay. Yeah, that was the part. Like you gotta visualize that, right? Part of the faith aspect is you visualize that and you see yourself there. So
Mhm.
like we could write down that I see myself as dot dot dot, right? Like,
Mhm.
doing all these things and you believe and then I guess you build more faith.
Mhm. I love that.
My 2 cents in this.
Yeah, go.
This is a lot like The Secret. You guys ever read the book The Secret?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
It's literally whatever you throw out to the universe, it will come back to you. Whatever you think, you will eventually materialize. Because if you keep thinking it, you will unconsciously make it happen. It may not happen right away. You may not happen, in 2 days. It may happen in a year, 2 years, and you may not recognize it until it's
Mm.
too late. And you're like, oh my God, it happened. And it's all about just thinking about it. As long as you think it, you will make it happen.
Yes.
What do you think I'm in here for? I used to live in an apartment for 16 years, and I had said I'm going to laminate my will onto that apartment wall. And if it wasn't for the universe telling me you need to get out, and because in my mind I was thinking, man, I wish I owned something. I really want to own something. And for the longest time I was saying it, but I never actually physically did anything about it until the universe came back to me and said, no, you need to be out of there. And within a year, I found myself in the condo that I own.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's like testament to what we just covered in the book.
Exactly.
So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime, Ian.
So good. Another big thing that I also learned in like the coaching program that I did that he does talk about there. And if you want to write this down, it wasn't in his exact words, but it like went along with what I learned in the other course was thoughts plus emotion plus repetition equals a belief. Because you can say a thought over and over and over again, but if you're anchoring in an emotion that is not going to like a higher frequency emotion to it, it's still going to manifest something poorly. Whereas if you say have a like a thought or an affirmation and you attach it to a higher frequency emotion, then it's actually going to, once you actually do that with repetition, it's going to change your actual belief. Right. So it's like you being in like a self-conscious place and saying in the mirror, I'm confident, I'm confident, I'm confident. Right. It's never going to work unless you're actually like believing it. Right. So you've got to like actually have the energy behind it. So like some of the ways that you can do that is like putting on like good high vibe music that you absolutely love. And we like anchor in emotions to songs. So any song you love from even like from like years ago or whatever that just brings you good vibes, putting on that song and then saying your affirmations is huge because then you're going to start anchoring that same emotion into those words. And then through repetition, eventually you won't need that music because that emotion is going to actually be anchored into those words, which then you're going to change your belief system. So he says that in there, just not quite like exactly with that, but in the program that I did, it was just very basic. So I just wrote that on my wall. I said thoughts plus emotion plus repetition equals a new belief.
Thoughts
What do you
plus
mean by
emotion. I got to write this down.
Mm-hmm.
emotions
Emotion
plus
plus
repetition?
repetition.
What do you mean by a high frequency emotions?
So like you can like even just Google it, but like different emotions have different frequencies. So
Okay.
like joy, happiness, like they would all be higher frequency,
Okay.
whereas like guilt and shame would be kind of like the lower frequencies, like the lowest frequencies.
Okay.
So if we say like, if we're thinking something, you can actually like check in with your body, right? Our bodies are so smart. Like when we say things, and it's like feeling not very good in our body, it's a lower frequency emotion within our body or a lower frequency energy. When we say something that's expansive, it's a higher frequency emotion, and a higher frequency like vibration in our actual body. So the whole thing that you want to do is anchor in these higher frequency emotions or energies into the words, so that when you say them through that repetition, it's then going to start anchoring in those new beliefs into your mind.
Okay.
Mhm. Your
Found
question
that. It's like a
to
vibration chart. If someone
Awesome.
wants to take a look.
Here, I'll pull it up. 1 second.
Thank you.
Let's share my screen. Yeah, there we go.
Wow. Okay.
So like kind of like, and like in your body, right, you'll feel contracted or expanded,
Mm.
right? So when you're feeling super free and like whatever, like it's because you're in these higher frequency emotions within your body. And then when you're feeling more contracted or self-conscious or whatever, you'll actually notice that your body is that. That's why like posture is so important. So even if you're, say, doing something and you want more confidence, even just fixing your posture, pulling your shoulders back, keeping your head up tall, like literally like giving yourself that structure within your actual physical body will actually shift like your thoughts and the way that you actually do things. Whereas if you even just do that now, like have your shoulders hunched over, like you're going to notice you're more like, you're not as confident having it like that. So even just like your posture and everything makes your sense.
Yeah,
Ian.
it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like there are days when like it's a, I don't know, stressful work day. Like you automatically kind of like hunch, and then you're like days like kind of tired. But then there are days like I'm not hunched and I just feel like, I'm good to go. Like you're right about that. I didn't think
Yeah.
that
And
that
like there's not like bad emotions either, right? Like they're all there for a reason. They're
hmm
all there to teach us things. It's just when we get like have these emotions stuck within our body. And I know like you guys probably know Julia does the spiral, and I'm doing like the spiral practitioner
Yep.
course like the next week. And that's what it does, is it removes these trapped emotions from your body, from your past, so that you can live in the higher, more expanded state of being
Interesting.
on a daily basis. Yeah. For the I know you were saying, Ian, like those three things. So the how the dad with his son. So he
Yeah.
said he mixed faith with desire. The second one was he communicated that desire with belief multiple times in different ways with consistency.
Persistency.
And then the third one was that he believed it. So a way that we can kind of like do that on like a daily basis, like within ourselves. I think like for me, like the biggest thing is just pouring belief into others. Like I know when I was not in a good place, I had other people pour belief into me. And like they always say, like, borrow my belief until you believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's
Right.
exactly what it is. Like the more belief that we can have in other people. And sometimes I'll catch myself like thinking that somebody is like doing something like wrong or doing something bad, but then I'll shift it and like I'll think out of their highest good of like what they actually are intending. And it actually will shift like the whole dynamic of the whole conversation, or basically the whole entire thing, when you actually start thinking the highest of that person without even like saying anything to them. So just always like having the highest good in mind for everybody. And then when you can, like always pouring that belief into other people, because then it's just like they're going to borrow it until they start believing it. And then they're going to do it. And then they're just going to keep rippling it out. Cool. Does anybody else have any like big takeaways?
Yeah, I think like the fate part where he speaks about like visualizing yourself. So like I guess visualizing yourself in where do you see yourself in 10 years? And then you kind of like, I guess, I don't know, create a sketch of that at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then you create your plan around it. That's what I took away, I think, from the last bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, visualization's huge. Do you know what you want to visualize to achieve when it comes to money?
I have a few.
Yeah. What are your ideas? You're open to sharing.
Like like one of them I have written on my wall. I don't know if you see all the sticky notes.
Yeah.
So one of them was like I see myself as this um, regional leader in my specific trade. So that's one.
1 second, guys.
And I just believe it. I keep believing it. And like, I don't know. I had this call recently about this potential job opportunity, and that path aligns with what I've been saying. But I don't know. I've like in between, I've like always found myself at this crossroads, right? And I believed in that, but at some point I lost faith, and then all these other things popped up in between, which were not aligned to that path. But I was like, oh, this looks so good. I should do it. I should do it. And then like I'd pause and reflect back, and then all of a sudden, like I would see a path on how I would attain that goal. Like, and it's almost like things are aligning, but because of my like lack of faith sometimes, like I have to deal with all the other like little mess ups. Like, oh, because I lost faith and I kind of moved away from that belief, I took on something else, and I'm like, oh, now I got to clean that up, and it's not aligned with that goal, and I've had that like for a few months now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wouldn't say it all the time, I wouldn't repeat it all the time, but when I would see it, it would remind me, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna be that guy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna be that person. So
Mm-hmm.
that was one of them, really, like visualizing myself as being that in that role. And the other one that I've kind of seen myself is I've been visualizing myself have this sustainable kind of farm with like an art studio in it, and it's like an ashram really. So people kind of, I don't know, go there to like, I guess, heal, relax, just get out of the daily hustle, and art is the kind of medium where they, I guess, just relax. So these are two that I constantly visualize. And now that like I'm like I can't do the farm and the like I know it'll come, but I don't know. It's not there yet. So I'm trying to make this a virtual. I'm trying to get creative and make it a virtual thing, so you can go on a website and experience that. But let's see how it works.
That's awesome.
So these are two like things that I really visualize. But I mean, if anyone else wants to share,
So good. Thanks for sharing, Ian. Does anybody else want to share? Something that you want to visualize?
I think Julia knows about the farm and the art studio on it. I've told that to her before.
So good. That's amazing.
Clearly, you're waiting for me to talk.
Yes,
So,
Dom.
fine. I will talk.
Well, Dom said about the condo, right? I think that was a real good
Ian?
testament.
Dom's
Sorry.
gonna share another one. Something that she's now gonna visualize because she already has the condo.
I got tons. Well, there's a few of them because let's be honest. I'm pushing 50, so I'll be 50 next year. And so I'm hoping personally not to work anymore. And if I do work, I want to work somewhere where it's hot, you know? So my my goal is to work somewhere hot for 6 months and then come back to Canada for 6 months. You know, I've got a place in Dominican. Now the goal is to figure out how to work from the Dominican, you know, by the pool, by the beach, and just be happy with it. I don't need to be rich. I just need to be comfortable.
Yeah, so good, Dom.
And I want all my friends there.
Yes, I can't wait to go for your 50th birthday. We're going to Dominican.
It's gonna happen. You gotta believe.
Oh, don't worry.
Yes. It's done. Yeah, and like visualize that like every single morning when you get up, especially when you're first up. Right as soon as you wake up, you're still in the brain wave that like allows you to actually go straight to your subconscious. I think it's the theta brain wave. I could be wrong with that, but when you do it right when you wake up or right before you go to bed, that's like the most powerful time to do it. So really like visualize that and like get clear on like how much money you would need in order to be living over there. Like even start looking at that, right? Because then once you kind of know that number, you can start visualizing like having that number in your bank account, like you like walk you through yourself through your day of like that visualization of you working in Dominican. Like you can get like really like awesome like visualizations with that, and it's crazy how it works. Whenever I've messed around with visualizations, like they always happen. It's like wild.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So good. Thanks for sharing. Shannon or Julia, do you guys want to share?
Hey Laura, I'm here with Sean. We've been
yay.
We've been listening. Yeah, I guess we kind of missed out on the first session. So we kind of missed the beginning of the book, which is fine. But I kind of just listened to the, I guess like the faith chapter, and I think that I kind of took away from it like the positivity will kind of trigger thing. I didn't write anything down, so I'm just kind of like going with the flow here. I kind of just took away from it. It's kind of relative to, I guess, like the law of attraction and action, I guess. Kind of like if you keep that positive mindset on, you know, certain things, you're like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna do this. And then you just kind of like, you know, make yourself get to a point where it just, you start taking actions to live, you know, a certain way or be a certain way. And I guess that's kind of what I took from that like kind of faith chapter, really. Is
beautiful.
Yeah.
So good. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Sean, do you want to share anything?
No.
You said no.
Like a takeaway.
Got a takeaway, Sean?
No.
What is something that you want to start like visualizing or like creating in your life?
I don't know.
What about for your business?
What's that?
What about for your business? You could just kind of like mess around with some visualizations for that. Like think about how successful you want your business to be, or at night, then you can visualize that.
Yeah, I do sometimes, just not like every day.
Mm-hmm. Cool. You can always work on doing it more consistently.
I should, yeah.
Just like it's fun with this stuff too. Like even with the law of attraction or manifestation, anything like that, it's like you just really got to fuck with it. And then once you start seeing the things actually happening, then you start building your belief in what it actually is too.
Yeah, it like, I don't know. I can attest to that. Like there's certain things that I've kind of visualized and I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that. And it's happened. Like when I first, I could give an example. When I was in college, I wanted to really find this bartending gig because I was like, you know what, it's easy money, right? And no one was hiring me. And I'm like, you know what? So I ended up becoming this bar back and busboy. And when I got in, in my mind, I guess I relate this to the barn story. Like I told myself, I'm here to be a bartender, and then I got there, and then I met the bar manager, and I was like, that's what I want to do, And I kept telling myself that, and things just happened. Like I was a bus boy for like maybe 6 months. After that, I was on service bar for 6 months, and then the next thing, I'm like training staff. Like that was like I had like real focus and determination, and I was like working out all the time. I was super positive, always smiling, and I guess everything that I kind of visualized and like I guess in my mind put focus towards, it was in that positive energy. Like when when we saw that, like I guess frequency thing, like that's what popped to my mind. And I was thinking about this in the morning too, and it's funny that this came up right now. Like I think in like 2 years, the previous bar manager left, the GM left, and there was this open void, and I was there the longest, and I knew everything how it worked, and I ended up becoming bar manager over there, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, like, but I got this, and it was really, I don't know, it was good, but I haven't been able to go back into that headspace, and that's something I've been trying to work on these last few months, to kind of get myself into that mindset, and then just go back, and I'm getting close. It's almost like, you know, it's firing up. Bzz, bzz.
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to share that. Like I don't know.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's so powerful. And now it's like we can all kind of do this together. We'll hold each other accountable for it. So that vision that you have, just keep holding that vision in your mind, because what we focus on, our minds will automatically find. Like the reticular activating system in our mind. That's what it does. It's like if I say like a black cat, like stop thinking about a black cat. You can't fucking stop thinking about a black cat, right? I'm like,
And
stop it. But you're always going to. So as soon as you have it in front of you, and it's your like constant thing, right? That's why in the first chapter, Shannon, I'll send you the recording so you guys can watch it and do the 5 questions. But that's why you're supposed to have it in front of you, say like on a wall, or like read it in the morning and at night, because as soon as your mind continuously sees that, it's going to start like popping ways into your life of how you can actually get there. It's like so crazy. Then your mind is literally just going to pick up on them, whereas you might not even see them, like if you didn't do that, because it's focusing on something else that is more forefront in its like mind right now, right? So the more that you can put the things you want in your mind, the more your mind's naturally going to pick those things out in the environment around you, so that you can actually succeed at those things.
and then I think it was in the faith part. The more I guess you plan, and the more detail you add to that visualization, the more clear the picture becomes. And like you said, it's like you just start seeing things happening. Yeah.
So cool.
All right.
Awesome.
I think who else was left? I totally like took Sean's time to speak over there. Sorry, Sean.
That's all right.
Did you want to chime in?
No, I don't think so. No.
For myself, I think that like what I'm like really like visualizing a lot is both with my business and like a partner, like a intimate partner. So like getting very clear on what it is that I want, and then like the lifestyle that we have, and then being able to like actually go out and then find that person. And then also for my business, being able to like get very clear on like last week how we broke down the numbers of the income, so that I can live the life that I want with like having complete freedom. And it was kind of like interesting this week. I had a few friends that I met when I was in Colombia, um, who texted me and said that things are getting pretty bad over there. And it like kind of like it broke my heart, because I'm like, I want to have enough money where I can like be able to actually like just be able to like send them money. And I probably still will send them money, but to like be in a position where it's like just there in abundance, so that when shit like that comes up, like you can just like serve and contribute to other people. Cause we're so fortunate just to like have all of the resources that we have. And like there's other people in the world that just don't have the same resources. So when we can use, one of the big things that he said was that I really loved was basically like turning your adversity into your biggest advantage, right? Like, so how when he was not able to, or he didn't have ears, like he would then, like he implanted that in his son, that when that happens, he's going to get extra help. And like, that's an awesome thing. So it turned it into an advantage. So like being able to say, turn that advantage of us, like being able to have all this access to money into somewhere where you can then contribute and make like an even bigger impact with that money.
Let's do it.
Yes. Go team.
Let's do it. I'm down. That's like my ultimate goal. I don't share it yet, but the ultimate goal is to like have this charitable fund, really, which you just manage and just like, I don't know,
Yeah. Just feel like
what is it? The
all
Melinda
good
Gates
places.
Foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that would be like, like really helpful, like in times like this, right? Like,
Yep.
there's like oxygen shortage, food shortages, like all kinds of like, I don't know, of like affordable housing.
Mhm.
There's like, I don't know, so many things. I think, yeah.
Mhm. I know Julia said in the chat too, she's given money to a few friends this year. It's been sad. Yeah, it's nice to just be able to contribute. And we live in a society that it's like you're greedy or this or that. So I'm so happy we're all on here shifting that money story, because like the biggest belief that I have is like when more good people have more money, the more good we're going to be able to do with it. And once we have the wealth in the hands of good people, we can also shift where that wealth is going and making sure that we're putting it into companies that are actually doing good for the world, instead of companies that are maybe like not doing so many good things. So you can really like shift like a lot of the world just by us having more wealth. So I'm happy that everybody's here, because the sky's literally the limit of how much money we make and what we do with it.
Yep.
Mhm. Cool. Any final takeaways? Because we're already at 8:30.
Wow.
Mhm.
Did we reach the self-confidence formula? Or
No,
that's not yet?
not yet. No,
Okay.
it'll be for next week.
I think I like jumped a few pages.
Okay, this is my final thought.
Yep.
What I got from Desire personally is when he kept saying the research that the son did, and the possibility of what he became. To me, all I thought about is that he made him think outside the box. He made him think that he can be whoever he wants to be, irrelevant of his circumstances. But that's thinking outside the box. Because if he kept thinking inside the box, he goes, well, you can't hear, it's okay. We'll still love you. He just kept saying, no, just think outside the box. Think of everything else you can do.
Mhm. Beautiful. Yes. So good. Does anybody else have any final words? No? Cool.
Like, I guess takeaway assignments, I guess, to add to the last bit of work, I think would be that part where you like visualize and you write who you want to be or where you see yourself. And then I think that ties in with what we did last week with point number 6, where you read it in the morning when you wake up, and then you read it at night before going to bed.
Mhm.
And then I don't know, if I think that was it that I picked up.
That's perfect. I love that. So just like free journaling of like kind of like a vision for yourself.
Yeah, like we had those 6 steps, right? And I think with today's like ending of desire with the beginning of faith, it's almost as if like, yeah, you have that chief vision or that main goal, but then now we're adding more depth to what that is.
I love-
Like, that's the goal, but then how do we get there? And then I think part of it is that painting or that visualization of what that is going to look like.
Once you've achieved it.
Yeah, so like in order for me to get to my chief goal is going to take me 10 years or like 15 years or maybe 5 years, and then you start like putting more I don't know, meat to it, or more like how like you start planning it and detailing it.
Mhm.
I think that was like these were some key takeaways
I
that
love
I
that.
picked up.
Cool. So we'll continue doing our thing from last week. So reading your number 6, like your affirmation every single morning and every single evening. And then from there, we'll do like, you can either just like actually visualize it in the morning and just allow your mind to wander, like what it looks like, what it feels like once you've already achieved that goal. And like get really detailed using like all of your senses. So like your sight, your smell, your sound, your taste, your touch, like whatever you're doing after you've already accomplished that goal, and get like super clear and like give it like a cool vision with it. You can either write it down or just kind of allow it to play out in your mind for this week then. Does that sound good, Ian? Yeah.
Are we doing one or as many affirmations as we want?
As many, I think.
Okay.
Right, like you have that one main goal, like your like where you see like what's the ultimate kind of goal, but then you can have many affirmations. I think at least what is everyone else's thoughts?
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. All
Cool.
right.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here. And we'll see you next week on the book club.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Yeah. See you
Bye.
soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.